Welcome everyone to this Writing Part 2 Survey Response Analysis. Before we start, I want to let you know that I will be using the Writing Part 2 Survey Response Tips and Strategies Guide. Now we do have a video about this guide. You can find that in our CELPIP library, Writing Part 2. And down here at the bottom. Now this video will guide you step by step on how to use the guide and the important tips and strategies to remember about writing part 2. So if you'd like to watch that video, I will leave a link to CELPIP Library in the description box. For today, I will just be going over the pages quickly. We need to understand the topic. These are the factors which influence our score. Ideas, vocabulary, survey structure, sentence construction and grammar, and we need to have a complete response. I will be doing all those today. Now about email tone for our survey response. Usually it's never informal, okay? Because we're writing about something important. So usually it's semi-formal and sometimes formal if the survey is conducted maybe by a city organization or the government. Okay, but in most cases it's semi-formal. We'll see the question today. And so this is the survey structure that I will be using. Okay, now let's get started. Okay, everyone, let's read today's responding to surveys question or survey. It's an overtime survey. Your company would like to change its overtime policy due to many complaints about being required to work it and the pay scale not being enough. So you work for a company, they want to change its overtime policy. Again, it says here that there are too many complaints about workers being required to work it. So maybe the workers don't want to work overtime. And also the pay scale not being enough. So maybe there's no reason to work overtime if you don't get any extra money, right? So what does it say here? So the company would like to know which option could be better for workers and could persuade them to work more overtime. I don't know about you, but I don't like to work overtime. I don't know. Do you? Maybe, maybe not. So, anyways, again, the company is looking for a way to motivate workers to work more overtime, okay, or persuade them. So then we have our two options here, and it says here option A, higher pay. Okay, so anyone working overtime would get paid extra per hour, double time. So usual pay is $25 an hour, and overtime pay would be $50 an hour, but only 2 hours max. Okay. So, wow. In Canadian terms, $25 an hour, I'd say is standard in Canada. Let's not forget the minimum wage in Canada, well, at least in Edmonton, my province, is $15 per hour. And so $25 per hour is for a more I would say that that's more um, medium wage. It's not a high salary is what I'm trying to say. It's not a high salary. It's more average for many jobs. Okay, for construction jobs, for some administration jobs, $25 an hour. That's um, in the medium range. Okay. Now, $50 an hour, that would be considered also higher, but also that's more professional. Lots of professionals make $50 an hour as a minimum, actually. Okay, so $50 an hour, that is much better, okay, um, for overtime pay. And in some cases in Canada, you would get paid that if you work overtime. In some companies, they really need it, especially construction companies. You would get paid $50 an hour for working overtime because they really want to motivate the workers to work overtime. Okay, so I think that that could motivate workers, but it would only be 2 hours max per day. Well, 2 hours max is not very clear, but I'm assuming it means overtime here per day. Okay, so let's just assume that. And it says anyone working overtime. So it says here most likely that you have to continue working overtime. Maybe you were required to work it. Okay. So now let's look at option B. It says optional overtime. Hmm. Overtime will not be mandatory for everyone. So again, here the question is suggesting that overtime is mandatory. Over here, it's suggesting that overtime could be mandatory or you will be required to work it. But with option B, it says overtime will be optional and not mandatory. Okay? Means you don't have to work it. Workers can choose when they would like to stay for overtime. Those workers who work overtime can work a maximum of 5 hours. Okay. So then, well, I'm just looking here at the hours. Here it's $50 for 2 hours. Here it's 5 hours, but I think that the pay rate would be just $25 an hour. Now, about overtime usually in a day, it would be 8 hours per day, maybe, or it just really depends about your total hours per week. And here in Canada, overtime is not until you work more than 44 hours per week. So it's not clear exactly when or how many hours will be overtime, but I can imagine that it's suggesting it's on a daily basis, okay? Well, again, with our surveys, I can see some good reasons for option A. I can see some good reasons for option B. Okay? And so this one, we have to choose one option and we have to explain the reasons. There is a way to maybe you could say why yours is better and compare it to the other option, but you have to make sure that you only argue for one side when you are responding to the survey, okay? So, well, let's start. I'm not right now, I'm divided. I think some reasons A, some reasons B, but I think I will choose B for some good reasons, okay? Now, I will remind you that I will be following the guide, this survey structure guide. is a general guide. And, well, the important part about this survey is just that we need to remember that we need to write at least 4 paragraphs for this one. And this is some good structural words that we can use here, okay? I'm going to be trying to use an idea, example, explanation method. And I find that that is the easiest way to write our survey response and the fastest way. I will be illustrating that today. So let's start with our greeting. Now I've made a template here. I've made the template. So our greeting, okay. Dear management, to start, I'm so grateful to be part of this overtime policy survey for our company. We don't have to worry about the greeting being strong, everyone. We should just get to the main reasons. So being straightforward, that's always the best way. And you can see here that I am using this blue. Let's remember the blue in my example, that will be the main structure format, okay? So we can use that for any survey. And now I'm going to get to the option that I choose. In my opinion, option B, making overtime optional, would be much more beneficial for the majority of our employees. Okay? I said making overtime optional here. I could say not having mandatory overtime. Here it says optional overtime, so that's why I'm choosing that one here. Okay, we should make sure just to get on with our ideas. Okay, so what's my first idea here? Let's look. First and most importantly, I believe that having optional overtime could provide a more flexible schedule for workers to manage their work-life balance. Okay. So, I like this idea. This idea of work-life balance, of having a good balance between your working life and your social life, work-life balance. So this idea is strong. It says it could provide a more flexible schedule, right, to manage their work-life balance. Okay. So I said that I want to use an idea, example, explanation. So I'm going to give a kind of example here, what I mean by work-life balance. Okay. For instance, many of our employees have families with young children, so they must be able to have sufficient time to foster their growth and development. Okay, another very good idea. Well, example. So I explained here. Well, no, sorry, I exemplified. Of course, employees with families and young children. Okay, so I also like this here, must be able, this is strong, must be able to have sufficient time to foster their growth and development. This is getting up in the 9 region. Some parts here, again, are 7 to 8. Some parts are more 9. The level 7s to 8s, they would have a tough time saying sufficient time to foster or support or help manage their growth and development. So that's a pretty strong idea there. Okay. So there's my example. Now I need to connect to the topic about the optional overtime. Okay. Therefore, not being required to work overtime would enable them to spend more quality time with their families. So you see, I like the optional overtime. It's flexible. I gave the example of children, and then I connected back to that optional overtime. I did say it in a different way, and here's another, I guess, stronger expression that level 9s, 8, 9s, 10s should know, which is noun phrases, right? Not being required to work overtime. Okay, that let me put it in a more easier way so you can see. We could easily say here, not working. Okay, not working overtime. But not working overtime, it's a little bit easier or simpler, let's just say. Also, here's a simple noun phrase, okay? And this one here is just a gerund, working, not working overtime, okay? So that's the same idea as the one that I have here. Not being required to work overtime. Just this one is stronger because it's using passive voice, you see? Passive voice, again, it's a strong form. Anytime you can use passive voice. Also here we have would enable them. Also, we're using modalities. Would enable, must be, could provide. Again, some of the language that I'm using so far, it's 7 to 8, and some of it is 9 or higher. Again, I'm writing a 7 to 9 example, so I need to mix it, or I'm mixing it that way. Okay, so level 7s and 8s can follow. And level 9s can get some ideas about how to express ideas in a stronger way. Okay, so very important, and more importantly, I believe it's the method that I'm using. Idea, example, explanation, back to the topic, okay? Okay, so there's my first reason. Now, let's get to my second reason. Let's see what's here. Okay. Okay. Another important reason is that workers could opt to work overtime if they have the need for it. Okay. Again, this is another good idea. If they have the need for it. So again, two things about this sentence. Again, some things in here are 7 to 8 and some things are 9. For sure, opt, choose. It's a higher level word here. And I would say that the conditional, using conditionals, even though I find this part here to be a little bit simple, we don't need to worry about it. Again, what we want to do is, and I'll explain this better in the end, but we want to try to mix our language. Level 9 doesn't mean everything is level 9. No. Or 10. That doesn't mean level 9. Level 9 means using some language that is that level. But the most important part for even 7, 8, and 9s would be to not make simple errors. I'll rephrase that in the end. So I have my example here. Okay. Could choose to work overtime if they need to, basically. If they need to, if they need to, low level. Here, if they have the need for it. Another little bit of a higher level expression there. Also, I put it here, meaning if they have the need to work overtime. Don't want to repeat myself with overtime for sure. Okay, so let's get to the example. For example, some employees may have more expenditures to meet. So these employees could work even more hours. Mhm. So again, we're giving the example of some employees. Okay, and here's another good, stronger expression. Sevens or eights they might say may have more expenses, may have more bills. In here we said expenditures to meet. Higher level expression there. And these employees could work even more hours. Again, this work even more hours because it says here they could work 5 hours. So that's why work even more hours. Okay. Okay. Also, keep in mind sentence structure here. I didn't point this out yet, but there are two clause sentences, right? For example, this and then so this. For instance, this, so this. Okay. And two clause sentences, we have to do that for 7, 8, or 9. Okay. And of course, punctuation is very important. And again, modalities. Could, may, could. The more modalities you use, the stronger your email, the higher your score. Okay. So I want to explain now, what does this mean for our optional overtime? Consequently, having optional overtime could be more profitable for those workers with greater financial obligations. Okay, very strong sentence. Very strong sentence. This one here, I will say, is strong. First of all, we have our noun phrase, gerund, having optional overtime. Then we have a modality, okay? Those are the first two parts, and then the vocabulary gets here, it gets higher, right? More profitable, meaning beneficial, helpful, and greater financial obligations. Over here we said needs, the need for it. Over here we said expenditures. Greater financial obligations over here. So that just means more expenses, okay? Oh, and again, this one here, I would say is definitely in the 9 or higher range. This sentence, a combination of the sentence structure and the vocabulary, okay? As well using consequently. All right. Okay. Again, I followed the same pattern as above. Idea, example, explanation. And when we do this, we have a lot of words. I can see here that I'm building something with more words, probably in the upper 190s, close to 200, because I still have to get to the closing. Okay, I've explained these reasons very well. Okay, and the closing, it's where you need to make your final case. Let's say like the icing on the cake, the strongest point. And we need a strong one. So let's see. Overall, I strongly support the idea of making overtime optional because it could be killing two birds with one stone by meeting the needs of the employees and the company. Well, again, this sentence, for some reasons, it's 7, 8, but for other reasons, it's 9 or higher. The part that I think is a little bit weaker is this making overtime optional. I would like to put something stronger. I could, for example, implementing an optional overtime policy. That sounds to me, now this sentence is very strong here. Implementing an overtime policy. There you go. I just turned something that I thought was weaker into a stronger expression. But let me get, I'm going to take this one away just to make a point here. The point is that not everything is required to be 9, 10, or higher to get 9. No, it's a combination. And this part of the sentence seems a little weak, but this part of the sentence, it's like 12. Well, yes. Why? Because anytime you can use an expression very wisely and smartly like this, you demonstrate high language knowledge. Okay? And so here we used, I hope you know this expression, it's very common in English, killing two birds with one stone. And it's used very smartly. It says making overtime optional, it would be or could be like killing two birds. It could be killing two birds with one stone. Why? Why? Because you meet the needs of the employees and the company. In here, we used by, killing two birds with one stone by how? By meeting the needs of the employees and the companies. Very strong closing remark here. So again, what I wanted to say is that even though this is weak, that's not the important part. The important part is the totality of the sentence. And a strong closing remark can guarantee you your 9. And also, using an expression could guarantee you your 9. 7, 8s, we don't have so much to worry about that. Okay? But for those students who are looking for 9 or higher, strongly recommended. I will, in my examples, almost all my examples, I will use an expression for you so you can see how we can utilize it well in our writing, okay? And let's close here with the final part, okay? And of course, thank you for your attention. I hope my opinion will be of value to you. And this should be around 200 words. Well, I don't see it here, but I remember when I was looking at it that this one, let me just check here. Right, 201. Well, everyone, so some final comments. If you can write this, guaranteed 9 or higher. I would say if you can write this exactly as is, maybe 10, 11. Okay. 12, I think it depends on the examiner and their knowledge. I would maybe give this one a 12. 11, sorry. Again, like I mentioned earlier, there are some parts which I feel are weak. Over here, for example. Over here, for example. Even this intro here, it's a little bit weak in its language use. Okay. And some words, they seem a little bit weak. But at the same time, there are some parts of this email which are very strong, like this part, like this part. And even the idea here of quality time and work-life balance, this is hard for level 7s and 8s to gather that information. And so, most of all, 7s will still make errors in sentence structure, in punctuation. 8s will make less. Now, level 9s, we cannot make any simple errors. We need to avoid that completely. And of course, if you want to guarantee your 9, again, we need some stronger expression. So they must be able to have sufficient time to foster their growth and development, for example. And therefore, not being required to work overtime would enable them to spend more quality time with their families. Okay? We need that kind of language. Consequently, having optional overtime could be more profitable for those workers with greater financial obligations. And definitely, because it could be killing two birds with one stone by meeting the needs of the employees and the company. Okay, everyone? So, last point to make is that, again, the totality of the survey response and the email, each paragraph, and paragraphing, punctuation, grammar, and language, the totality, spacing, that's what makes the email over. And 200 words. Anytime you can write 200 words, more possibility of getting 9 or higher. Okay? So, everyone, feel free to comment anything you may have, any questions you may have. And again, I will be making more survey responses coming up in the next few weeks, and I will be using language similar to this. And specifically, I'm going to be uploading some very useful writing expressions that will benefit you greatly to achieve that higher score. Let's remember to read this sample and type it out and practice the grammar from it and the expressions, okay? Don't forget, practice makes perfect. I would like to remind you that if you're looking for some more listening, reading, writing, or speaking CELPIP exam practice, then you should definitely subscribe to our CELPIP library. The CELPIP library has hundreds of examples of listening, reading, writing, and speaking, which will help you develop your score, whatever the score you need. Also, The library contains vocabulary, listening skills, reading skills, grammar, and writing skills exercises, which will really help you improve your general understanding of English and also for the exam. So, and you can purchase a 1 month pass or a 2 month or a 3 month subscription for a very low price. And of course, if you really enjoyed this content, then please like this video, share it, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way we will keep on producing more CELPIP analysis for your development. Have a great day.